This is the Seller Process Podcast, where we talk about the best systems, processes, and SOPs for your Amazon business so that you can regain control of your time, build up your team, and scale your e-com empire.
Hello, entrepreneurs. If you ever got frustrated about running out of stock after an unexpected bump in sales due to some holiday or an unforeseen event that made you lose momentum right when your listing was at the top of its potential, then this episode is for you. Our guest today will share with us a proven method to accurately predict sales peaks and offer a solution to deal with it, so that you will never have to give up sales during peak times ever again. These guests are already popular in this podcast, having shared with us a method to track our launches, which is one of the most listened to episodes. You can check out episode 3 in the Seller Process Podcast. I'm talking about David Lang and Ryan Sherrard. They're two Canadians living in Munich, running a US business together. Dave is an airline pilot flying the Airbus A350 across the globe for Europe's largest airline. And Ryan has a PhD and is a research scientist working on groundbreaking mRNA technology. They joined forces 2.5 years ago and have since then, in short time, turned their e-commerce business into their e-commerce journey into a 7-figure business. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, Gianmarco, good to see you again.
Hey,
awesome.
Nice to be back.
Awesome. Great. So guys, I think anyone who has been selling on Amazon for long enough got to this frustrating situation in which, they got a product at some point, the product was selling more due to some like holiday or some other reasons. And they were so happy. And right when the product reached its top, they ran out of stock. I think that's a very common problem for Amazon sellers. And, they just say to themselves, that's a good problem to have, right? That's always usually what people say. And, I like to throw a challenge here in this episode. We should make our mission, to not let people ever again say this sentence, that's a good problem. Because yes, in a way it is, but it's also a problem. So we don't want to have that problem, right? We want to get the full potential of our listings, right? So, we're going to talk about peak dates and how to deal with stockouts to avoid stockouts. So let's start off with understanding what are the major dates that we're talking about and which one we should be aware of that can potentially put our inventory prediction off track.
I'd like to actually start with saying why it's so difficult for new sellers, especially, to determine how much should they order. For their first order, it's so hard to even understand or foresee how big is the potential of a peak on Amazon, right? Like some of these numbers, they seem so astronomically high. We can't even imagine it. If you have a product that's selling 10 a day and you think, hey, that's good. Well, how big can it actually go on Christmas time, or let's say a Mother's Day peak, a Valentine's Day peak? And it's so hard to imagine that without following data. Right? I think most sellers, especially the new ones, that's why they say, oh, it's a good problem to have. You underestimate the potential of Amazon and the power of peaks. And that's why we decided, okay, let's actually build a sheet that's based on formulas using a lot of data from a lot of Amazon sellers. So we use data from Helium 10, we track their sales records, and we designed an Excel sheet that'll actually allow you to enter your baseline and just enter in a peak. We'll talk a bit more about that later. And it'll actually show you exactly how many units you should be sending in or how many units you should be ordering. Because if you just believe and trust the data, you're going to be a lot more successful because you're not going to run out of stock after that peak.
Yeah, I think the pitfall a lot of people fall into, and even us at the beginning, is, kind of not knowing how big the peaks are going to be for, the generic holidays. If you have a gift product that's going to have a peak at Mother's Day or Father's Day, Valentine's Day, maybe you sell a Halloween based product. And of course, Christmas is just big for everybody. So, there should be no guesswork going into how large these peaks are going to be for your sales. Because the worst thing is, you go at a sale halfway through the peak and you miss out on the biggest days where, conversion is great. People are buying like crazy. Like those are the days you have to be there. So going out of stock, mid peak is just something that should be avoided. And we built this sheet to show you how much you should be, like Dave said, how many units you should be ordering from your supplier and how many you should be ordering or sending into Amazon if you do FBA to ensure you have enough stock to get you through each of these peaks.
Awesome. Okay.
To answer your question now, when you're saying like, what are the specific dates? So this is obviously very dependent on the category that you're selling in, right? There's some very obvious peaks. If you're selling gifts, for example, Ryan mentioned them already. You have Valentine's Day in February, then you'll have Mother's Day, let's say in May and June. Every year around in July, sometimes it changes, but there's Prime Day. Prime Day is a huge day. It has a nice peak in sales.
Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yeah. And then, everyone talks about a Q4 peak. If we're honest, it's not actually a Q4 peak. What we've noticed looking at all the data is that the peak, the ramp up actually only starts around November 15th. And that's slowly starting the early Christmas shoppers. They're slowly starting November 15th. And then you have the big peak. It's normally about a week before Christmas. The reason why it's so early before Christmas is because on your listing, Amazon will actually have a little note saying this product arrives before Christmas. And as long as that note is on your listing, you're going to have great sales. As soon as that disappears, and we'll talk about one of our examples later of a downfall that we had. As soon as that disappears, you're not getting sales anymore because people are only shopping for Christmas to get it by Christmas. So one thing to note about peaks is that the peak sales day doesn't always line up with the holiday. So let's say Valentine's Day, it just passed February 14th. We notice that it's normally about 3 days before. That's your ultimate peak day. And then after that, it will slowly start dying off because it's just last minute shopper shopping then. But the majority of it will be 3 days before the holiday, except for obviously, as I just mentioned, Christmas, because it really depends on that message on your listing.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So as you said, people sometimes underestimate this problem. So these peak times, and as you also mentioned before, it's there are some dates in which all listings are probably going to go up, even though they're not related really to that holiday. Just because there are more shoppers around, going browsing on Amazon. So in the meantime, they might shop for Mother's Day, but they might do some other shopping, right? So there's just increased volume in Amazon. So that's something to be aware of. So I'm interested to learn more about your experience because it's something that I can give people context. Okay, so how big an impact can have, doing this right or doing this wrong. Okay, because then once people realize that, they might say, oh shit, I might do something about it, right? So Tell me more about your real life experience and how these peak dates impacted your business.
Yeah, and I mean, a big part of doing it right or wrong is not leaving it up to guesswork. So what Dave and I like to do is when we launch a new product, we have in our minds what we think the peak dates might be, but we don't want to guess. So the best thing to do is to go and look at a well-established competitor that's been selling, for the past year. And Helium 10 has tools X-ray. You can go in and see, a big competitor that's on the same keywords that you want to be, that is in the same category, and look at their peaks. You want to find a competitor that, of course, has enough sales to show, distinct peaks and good sales trends that didn't go out of stock. So you want to make sure you have a competitor that has good data behind them, but just look at their peaks. When do you see peaks in their data? And more importantly, how big are their peaks? Dave and I like to talk about two different measurements, and that's your baseline, or how many units are you going to sell on a normal off-peak day? That is your baseline. And then when we talk about your peak day, on Valentine's Day or on Christmas, what is the peak number that you're going to get? And simply, you just have to look at your competitor. And if a competitor sells normally 10 a day, that's their baseline. But then on Mother's Day, they jump up to 100 a day. you know that it's a tenfold increase. So then you can kind of look, okay, what's my baseline? And I should be multiplying that by 10 come Mother's Day. And that's going to be my peak day. So we base everything first off of our competitor sales trends to get a better idea of how our product is going to be performing.
Right. When you say
the holiday.
When you say by 10, you multiply that number by 10. It was just an example, a general example, or you always multiply by 10?
No. So just to give a general thing of what we've noticed on our products over the last 3 years is that if we take a look at, it's all about relevancy for that holiday, right? So for example, we don't sell Halloween products. So on Halloween, like you said, there might be increased shopping for people looking for Halloween decorations or Halloween costumes. Do we see an increase in traffic? Perhaps slightly, but it's not very specific to us. So you really have to use the knowledge of like, okay, which holiday affects me? So even if you're a gift, if it's Father's Day and your gift is for a mom or a sister, you're not going to see a big increase. I think some exceptions, like you mentioned, Mother's Day is just everyone shopping for their mom. It's a huge holiday in general, right? So there's an increase in traffic. So what we actually noticed was that it's about a compounded 5% increase for everyone, whether it's Q4 or whether it's for Mother's Day. It's a compounded 5%. What does that mean? So it means that day to day it increases 5% until the peak, and it all starts. So we've noticed that our Christmas shopping time starts around November 15th, right? So even if you have a baseline of 10, then the next day will be a 5% increase of that, and then another 5% of that. So it's an exponential growth, even if you're not in the gift category. So if you're selling a toothbrush, just because of increased traffic, you're getting about a 5% increase, compounded. If you're actually specific to that, you're getting about a 15% increase, which is insane. It's huge because that's compounded. To simplify the method, what we've done is said, look, let's take this guesswork and this average out. How about this is where Ryan's brain comes in, right? As our scientist. So what we said is, I want to be able to give me the baseline sales. What am I selling on a random Tuesday in the summer? Let's say, I'm selling 15 units. And then I want to be able to say, here starts my peak. And I know that I'm going to hit, 2000 on Christmas. So from 15, I'm going up to 2000. It sounds crazy, but that's what my competitor kind of did. You did a 40X or whatever. So I just enter those two numbers in, and then our sheet will actually calculate backwards. What is the compounded growth day to day starting on that date?
And that's how we built this sheet, we called it the peak performance sheet. And that's all, all that you have to know. You just have to enter in, what are your peak dates? When does it start? Dave mentioned Christmas usually starts around November 15th. So that would be the start date. What is your peak date? And that would be for Christmas around December 16th. So you just need those two dates. What are your baseline sales that you sell normally on a non-peak day? And then what can you expect to sell on the peak day? So if you have those four, entries, if you just put those into the sheet, we'll map out how many units you can expect to sell under that entire peak time. And you can put in Christmas, you can put in any other holiday. We allow you to put in up to 5 peaks plus Cyber Monday, Black Friday, and Prime Day. And then you have an overview. It paints the picture of what the next year is going to be like. And so you can go to your supplier and say, look, these are the numbers I'm expecting to do next year. So this is the size of purchase order I need to make. Or, I need to send some units into Amazon. How many do I need to send in? Well, here's what the sheet is telling me I'm going to sell over the next 60 days. So just, you can start trusting the numbers instead of, just making guesswork of it.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
One thing that we use the sheet for one step further is that we'll then actually plot our forecast next to our actual sales. And then we can see like, oh, look, we forecasted a compound growth of about, 10% from this day to that day, but we're actually doing better. That means, a couple things. One, your ranking could be way better. You're way more relevant than you thought you were. Your sales velocity is just better because there's an increase in e-commerce traffic. And then we're able to react way quicker to, so if, for example, let's say it's Christmas time, November 15th, it starts ramping up. If we see we're ramping up faster than we thought, then we know that we're going to have a bigger peak than we thought. So we can actually double down and send in more. And it'll still make it in time for the Christmas sales. So the sooner you understand what am I expecting to sell and what am I actually selling, the quicker it allows you to react and send in more units.
Yeah, definitely. It totally makes sense. And it's even more relevant, I think, now that timing, it's getting slower, and everything, it's logistics is slower. Even China production, it's slower due to some problems with electricity shortage, right? So yeah, definitely it's something that it's really important to understand. And so just to recap, you're saying that you have seen across several accounts with several type of products and categories that there is a 5% compounded increase in sales prior to the holiday. Let's say in this case, Christmas or Prime Day might be. And it can be even more if it's like a gift product or a product that it's related to that holiday, right? It can go up to 15%, you were saying. So these are like great numbers for us to put our minds on and really start having, making more accurate predictions for sure.
Yeah.
So
one thing sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, go ahead.
Prime Days. So Prime Day doesn't have a lead up. Well, we actually notice sometimes there's a drop off before because people are waiting for Prime Day. So Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they're 1 day peaks. They don't have a lead up and they don't have a drop off. It's a hard drop.
Yeah,
right?
Makes sense.
Black Friday and Cyber Monday so interesting is that they normally fall within the ramp up to Christmas anyway. So it's like, as you have the regular ramp up to Christmas, you have 2 extra peaks. We call it like the Batman or like the, what do you call it? What's the symbol?
Oh, the rock on
the
symbol.
rock
right?
on symbol, right? Like that's what your sales look like on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, like rock on, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Interesting. And what about peak dates that people might identify for their products that are not the common ones, right? You just mentioned Prime Day, Christmas, Mother's Day. But what if they find their product, I don't know, goes well on May 15, which we don't know why. For some reason, there is a special holiday about that product. How can they?
So there's so many ways to do that, and the number one way is to look at your competition.
Yeah.
Who's already selling? Like, don't guess. Look at who's selling exactly that type of product. It's maybe slightly different. If it's the same keywords, it'll follow the same trend. And one important thing to remember is that you don't have to use their baseline, and I think that's something that's super important to understand. So if you're coming into an established market and the main competitor is selling 100 units a day, and then he's going to sell 3,000 units, let's say at Christmas, then don't assume that you're going to sell 100 a day too. You might sell only 10 a day, but it's the delta, the change to your peak that's so important. So I think that's something that's super, super important to remember. So you just want to understand that your baseline may not match the number one, but your trend line will follow their trend.
Yeah, and it's a good point you bring up. There's our spreadsheet allows you to put in any peaks that are relevant for your product, graduations, maybe wedding seasons. I don't know. There's lots of other peaks, but like Dave said, look at a well-established competitor that's in the niche to determine, what peaks do they have? I can probably expect to get those similar peaks. What's my baseline going to be? And then what do I think my peak day is going to be? And base everything, just look at your competitors and base your data off of them.
And I think what's important to know too is that peaks are different than seasonality. So seasonality, if you have a summer product, you're going to have a slight ramp up in spring, you're going to have the summer sales, and you're going to have a slight decline in the fall, let's say. That's different than a peak. So a peak is literally that one event that everyone is shopping for. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, those are perfect examples. You're looking for that gift. You have to buy your girlfriend or your wife a gift, or a lot of people do, right? And it has a hard cutoff, right? So that it makes it a bit easier to plan around because you know when it is. What makes it so hard to plan around is that most people underestimate the volume of it, the volume of sales.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. So definitely it's a smart way to go look at sales of your competitors and work out what could be your increase in sales, but obviously not in terms of units, in terms of percentage increase, because we might not have we might not sell the same amount of the like the first one, the top listing in the category, but we might have like an increase in percentage that is similar to them. Okay, so that's a great tip. I want to go back to your real life experience. I would like you to share that because I think it's a great case study where people can learn the impact that this can have. And I also know that you found a new thing that it's interesting for people to share. I don't want to give up more. I'll let you talk about. No spoiler. Go ahead, and we want to hear it from you.
Okay, I think I'll intro this, and then Ryan, you tell what actually happened. So
I'll relive it.
You'll relive it. This is our trauma. So the way that Amazon works, right? They also have to calculate, especially during peak times, which one of my products are fast-moving products, which ones are a bit slower, and they use their own models. They try to calculate how many sales are you going to get. The problem with Amazon's way of doing it is it's very reactive, and I think most sellers can agree to this. So Amazon will recommend, for example, on the inventory planner tab, right? So in Seller Center, go to inventory planner. They have a recommended number of units that you should be sending in to stay in stock. If you were to only follow that, you would miss all of your peaks, every single one.
Yeah.
And then after the peak, they would be like, oh no, quick, you got to send in more units. This is a hot selling product. Thanks, Amazon. It's a bit too late, Valentine's Day, Christmas is over. And unfortunately, that also happens with like restock limit, right? So they'll be like, oh, you can't send in any, you're not selling enough. After Christmas, like, wow, you sold a lot, send us more. Like, to us, it doesn't really make sense, but that's how Amazon does it. And their model, when I studied statistics, my professor had a really cool analogy. So he was saying statistics work. It's the same like driving in a car and looking in the rear view mirror. And you're only looking in the rear view mirror and you can actually drive a car as long as there's no sudden change in the road. So as long as it's a slow curve, everything is fine. If there's like a 90-degree turnoff, it's going to be too late. You're going to go off the road. And what happens with peaks is it's like a 90-degree turn. It's a sudden surge in sales. And sometimes they're like 30x. They're huge. So Amazon has a hard time calculating them unless they have a previous year history. But if you're a new product launching, you don't have last year's Christmas or last year's Mother's Day. So what happened with us, and I'll just intro it and then he'll say how we discovered this, is we had a relatively slow moving product. We were selling about 20 units a day, but we knew that this was a particular gift that would absolutely crush it come Christmas. And we sent in all the units that we had saying, okay, we're going to sell about 5,000 of this, in 3 weeks. We're going to send it into Amazon. And Amazon checked them in and it said they were available. But then what happened 3 days before Christmas?
We're leading up to the real fight. Yeah, I like it. This is like a thriller movie.
We went out of stock, essentially. The listing, there were no units available to buy. They were available to buy, but they were showing like a really, really slow shipping time. So people weren't purchasing them anymore. And we're like, what's happening, Amazon? We sent in all of these units. I think it was 1,700 units, but customers aren't able to purchase them. It says like the shipping date is well into the future. They're not available to buy now and be shipped out.
However, on our end, it did say units available.
Yeah.
So it said 1,700 units available. It said then, so that whole Christmas tag where it's like arrives before Christmas, all our other SKUs had it. And this one, it disappeared. Then it also had for FBA, which is rare, usually ships in 2 to 3 days. Normally FBA ships right away. And if you do FBM, it'll say your prep time usually ships 2 to 3 days. So our FBA listing looked like an FBM listing. And because of that, we lost the arrives before Christmas date.
These were the biggest days of Christmas. These are the days where we're expected to sell hundreds of units of this product. And so we had to dive in and be like, well, where are these 1,700 units that we just sent in? And the deeper we dived, we found out that all of these units were sitting at one fulfillment center that Amazon had just put them off to the side because according to Amazon's data, which we mentioned, is very reverse looking, very reactive. Amazon had said, this product only sells 20 a day. Why are you're sending in 1,700? We're just going to park these to the side for a little bit, because we don't see the numbers you do. And here, Dave and I are looking at the numbers, that we've calculated for the peak. We know these units are going to sell, but Amazon didn't. So they parked them to the side in what they called a supplemental fulfillment center. And for us, this was just a killer because it meant that these products were not Prime eligible anymore. They had slow shipping times. They weren't being distributed across Amazon's fulfillment network for people to buy on the biggest shopping days of the year. And the way we found it was, if you dive, there's reports you can dive into an inventory where your inventory is placed. And we saw these 1,700 units sitting at a fulfillment center, and there was absolutely no movement, no customer purchases, no returns. There was just no movement at all on these 1,700 units.
Yeah. So
interesting.
The only way that, and Seller Central, they admitted it to us. So when we opened the case and said, hey, we just looked at this report and there's 1,700 units sitting in one warehouse. Why? They told us, listen, it's a supplementary fulfillment center. We're going to transfer it to a general fulfillment center and we'll expedite it. It took about 3 days. Well, those were the 3 shopping days. And then only then was it available, but only in the West Coast. So all in all, we lost $50,000 worth of revenue on the 3 biggest days. And we were actually, because of the restock limit, we were actually saving those for the last 3 days because we knew that our ACOS would be the best during those days. And the hardest thing is when you have peaks is those 1,700 units we would have sold in 3 days. It's now going to take us 2 months to sell them. So there's the additional, because the baseline goes back down to, to 20, 25 a day. So what could have been sold in 3 days. So it obviously affected inventory cost, ranking, sales velocity,
IPI, sell-through rate, all of Amazon's metrics essentially
get hurt because of Amazon, and they didn't even tell us. They didn't warn us before. So if you ever send in, I think this is something important for anyone who's listening. If you're ever sending in a large amount of units to Amazon, even though your baseline is low, because you're sending it in before a peak, 2 things to note. 1, send it in early enough so it can be dispersed across the country. That's super important. And 2, you want to dive into the inventory report. So it's the fulfillment report that shows all the warehouses. And you want to make sure that there's movement, that it's actually being dispersed, that it's actually, being transferred from one warehouse to another, that those units, customers are actually buying them. And it's a simple report you can pull. It gives all the information. And that's the only way to identify these supplementary fulfillment centers, because Amazon doesn't make it public.
I will note Helium 10 just rolled out, I think, recently heat maps, so it'll show a map of the United States and it'll show bubbles that where your inventory are. So if you go to your SKU page on Helium 10, you'll see actually bubbles that indicate where all your units are. And so if you see a massive bubble just, sitting in one warehouse, that's potentially a red flag. So you should dive in and be like, how many units are there? Why are they there? Is there movement from day to day? If there's movement, it might be okay. But if from day to day you don't, all those units are just sitting there without movement, that could be a red flag that all your units are sitting in a supplemental fulfillment center and they're not actually Prime eligible.
And one thing to note, if you open a ticket to Seller Central, it's important that when you go in the report, you see the warehouse name and you tell them, listen, I see there are 2,000 units at this warehouse and it hasn't moved in the last 2 weeks. Can you please explain why not? And then they actually have detailed information to open it. Otherwise, you're going to get a blanket statement. It's going to be one of those cookie cutter answers that is absolutely useless and you're going to go in circles. But if you do the research and you tell them, listen, I know there's this many units in this warehouse and I need them for sale across the country, then they'll actually be able to do something about it.
Awesome. Yeah, great. This is definitely a great insight. I was looking for you to share because I think it's super valuable. It's something that nobody's talking about, and it's something that everybody should be aware of. So basically, what you're saying,
So sorry for interrupting you again, but right before Christmas, when it happened, we reached out to everyone in the community, right? All the Facebook groups we wrote and we said, guys, what's going on? Has anyone seen? Usually ships in 2 to 3 days on an FBA listing. And the answers were completely, try this, try that, but no one knew. And then once we found out, we actually went back to all the groups and we told them saying, listen, there is such a thing as a supplementary fulfillment center. It's basically like a holding. It's extra. If we would have known, Gianmarco, we would have had $50,000 extra in 3 days, but we didn't know.
Incredible. Yeah. That's a great learning experience, and everybody, could learn from your experience to not to have a similar one with their account. So what you're saying, basically, just to summarize, is that Amazon has like regular fulfillment centers where they ship out products to the customers, and then they have kind of, as you said, supplementary fulfillment centers where they basically park the excess inventory. The inventory they think it's in excess, but because of their poor capability of predicting your sales peaks, right? But it's something that you actually can know and foresee. So basically, what David and Ryan here are suggesting you guys to do, the action point for you to take is that make sure that you know what are your peak dates, okay? And then way in advance of that, make sure you have enough inventory. And then also, like, one more action you could take is to check in your inventory report where your inventory is sitting. And if you see too much inventory sitting in one warehouse, that might be a sign that it's a supplementary warehouse. Okay, so you could open a ticket to seller support and say, guys, please move this inventory that it's sitting there to regular warehouses. Otherwise, we will not have enough inventory to ship out once we will get to that peak date. That's an awesome insight and super valuable.
And you know what, to take it one step further, I think what we'll do is we'll actually record a quick YouTube video on how to pull that report and how we look and try to identify it. I'm throwing Ryan under the bus here. I'm going to make him do a YouTube video. And then this way, if people want to know a step-by-step on how to pull that report and what we actually look for, so maybe you'll share it in your link, I guess. We'll do a quick YouTube instructional video on how we actually pull that report.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. We'll put that link in the show notes. And also, guys, remember that as in every episode, we share some templates, spreadsheet SOPs with you. This time, the DAVAN brothers, I like to call you guys, is they're sharing this spreadsheet that they created to manage peak dates. So it's called peak.performance, right?
Yeah, the peak performance. Yeah,
exactly. So they're going to share it with you guys. So just find the link in the description of the YouTube video or in the show notes in our website. Just find this episode at thesellerprocess.com and you will find the link to download this spreadsheet. Thank you guys very much for sharing this. Tell people how they can reach out to you if they're interested to learn more or know more about you.
So, I mean, we have a private Facebook group that you guys can join. It's DAVAN Group. Pretty straightforward. It's a relatively small group. We're still focusing most of our attention on selling our own products right now. So that's, most of the attention. We're still scaling big. We're trying to double our revenue from last year. We're actually also, in the process of maybe selling one of our brands. So that's taking up some time, but we do always like to give back any of the knowledge that we've learned over the last couple of years. We do have a whole bunch of spreadsheets. We actually sell a whole suite of spreadsheets. There's about 10, 11 of these spreadsheets in our package that you guys can reach out to us, get a good deal right now because we're still just starting out and trying to set up that a bit more for people to buy.
Yeah, we have YouTube videos as well for all of our spreadsheets where we walk you through exactly what the spreadsheets are used for, how to fill them out, and how to take action based on all of our spreadsheets. So join our Facebook group, check out our catalog, and just
subscribe to YouTube.
Click that bell. And just come say hi to us. Like Dave said, it's a small group, so we love welcoming new people.
Awesome. Definitely, guys, check them out because they're the real deal when solving problems with spreadsheets. They do have a spreadsheet for you.
Every problem can be solved with a spreadsheet.
I think that should be our slogan.
Awesome. So thank you again, guys. So remember, the key to success is to emulate the best. So put in practice what David and Ryan just shared today. And in order for you to never run out of stock again because of peak dates and you will never have to say again, that is a good problem to have. We don't want you to have those good problems. All right. So thank you guys again. And I'll hope to see you in the next episode. Hey entrepreneurs, I hope you enjoyed the episode and learned something from the interview. If you're serious about creating systems for your business, automating processes and building up your team so that you can transfer the tedious daily tasks in order to focus on more high-level strategic tasks and work on your business and not in your business, I've created a guide for Amazon sellers named Capturing Systems and Creating SOPs. that you can find at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook, where you will learn how to leverage systems and SOPs in your Amazon business so that you can accomplish more by working less, optimize your time, automate and delegate tasks, and reap the benefits of being a true business owner and not simply an operator in your own business. Go download the ebook at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook and start implementing all the tips and insights that I share with you. And leave us a review or a comment to let us know how the content we are sharing here is making an impact in your business. And have a productive week.